Welcome to TGIF.
Oh, the responsibility of little people.
A lot of work.
Little people. We've got a lot of little people in the church.
We do.
Who are such a blessing to us all. But those little people that we raise, that we call children,
What happens to them?
those little people grow and they get older. And it's like seasons change and kind of how we interact with them needs to change too.
It does. And that takes us to our word of the day, which is parenting. Wow, that's a big word. Big responsibility as well. And when I think about the book of Proverbs, Proverbs have a lot, really, truly, a lot of instructions, how to go about life. And in Proverbs 22, before we get to our actual verse here, they're talking about, corrupt roads or being honorable and a lot of different things. And I think it's interesting then when we get to verse 6, it really hones in on our children, doesn't it? So Proverbs 22, verse 6, direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. I think I've thought of that verse a lot, and I've heard people use it different ways, and it's hard. It's really hard because we do want to put them on a good, solid path, right? Solid path to success. Well, let's define success. Let's define a lot of things, and Proverbs does a lot of that, kind of defining that success and what it means. So those rules, the rules that we lay down early and trying to get our kids on the right path, they do tend to change, don't they, when we get...
Because I think what happens, we go from parenting to being a parent as we raise these adult children. And the parenting meaning it is about the rules and the boundaries and meeting the needs.
Right.
When they're little, we have a responsibility, and so much more is in our control when they're little. But being a parent is about a relationship. And that changes the tables, and especially when they become adults. So we have adult children now, and as we were talking through this and just having conversation, wow, there's a lot of things I wish we would have done different. So if you are watching and you have little ones, listen up. Maybe this will help you. Or if you're like us and you've already, raised your children into adult, you're trying to figure out the second part of that parent-adult-child relationship, I think you're going to find these 5 things helpful that we're going to talk about.
I do like the part that you talked about, flexibility, though. In all of this, right? It's about flexibility. Very flexible.
Right.
And we are learning that.
If we didn't need to be flexible, that would be because we're perfect, and we're so not perfect. So the first one we want to share with you is sharing. Learning to share your adult children. And sharing usually means with that significant other when they move on and get into a relationship. And when you're sharing them with that significant other, it's also that significant other's family, known as the in-laws. And there's a lot of challenges that go with that. You hear stories all the time, and you might be the one who's frowned upon are we going to your mother's house again? I mean, those things we set in place, our kids, our adult kids hear us saying and acting this way. So learning to share your adult children is something that you need to grow into.
Yeah, you really do. Yeah, and so then the next one is questions. I know that when my kids are, off doing so many things, I wanted to ask them a ton of questions about everything that's going on in their life. And the reality is, I need to be a better listener. I need to pay attention to what they're saying in the moment when we are together in our relationship. And lo and behold, if I'm a really good listener, I start to find out answers to my questions. I really do. I mean, they tell me about more details as they go along because they don't feel like I'm interrogating them on question after question after question. So I have found that that's a good tool, something that we have to really practice. And we talked about it in a TGIF before, about that listening. Right? Just hearing your children. Are you really listening to what they're telling you about? And then trying to, connect it with their lives and where they're stressing out and where they're having huge demands put on them. Be good listeners.
Absolutely. And the third one, boundaries. Now the boundaries definitely change because when they're little, we set the boundaries. We set the curfew. We control who they play with, how far down the street they're allowed to go before they have to turn around on their bike. We can set all those boundaries. That is easy. But when they're older, we've got to realize we don't set the boundaries anymore, and we need to give them space to grow and set their own boundaries. But what happens to us, and when I say us, because we are experiencing it, when they're setting those boundaries or not answering the questions or not providing the answers to the questions we want to ask, but we're trying not to ask the questions, it's easy to get our feelings hurt.
It is.
And all they're doing are establishing boundaries. So you could have adult children that are 50 years old, 60 years old right now. This is still part of it.
It is.
I don't think we ever outgrow this, because as long as they're still with you, they are your adult children. So setting those boundaries, we've got to allow our adult children to do that. We're not in charge anymore.
Giving them space, and that's hard. I want to be in their space. I want to be with them in their space, and that's hard. But this next one is really hard because it is mistakes. And the ability to humble yourself enough and say, that was a mistake. I stepped into space that, you're growing and you're learning, and try to, drive it a certain direction because I thought that's what I needed to do in that moment. And the reality is I need to be able to apologize in those moments and humble ourselves and say, you know what, you're growing, you're learning, and there was a mistake for me to see them. They're going to ask for your advice. If they really, really have, if you've developed a trusting relationship, they will ask for your advice.
And that's different.
It is.
And that's different when they ask for it, but it's when we volunteer it. Yeah. That ability to say sorry. I'm apologizing to my kids all the time from the bottom of my heart. And, you can't go back and change it, but hopefully it's helping me grow because they're still my adult children.
Exactly, yeah.
And then the fifth one is fixing problems. Oh, the Band-Aids don't work anymore. I wish we could just put a Band-Aid like we did on the scrapes when they were little, put it on these life situations that are hard for them, but we can't. We can't fix it. We need to accept that we can't fix it, and we just need to be a parent, not try to parent them. We need to be a parent, love them unconditionally, support and encourage them, be there when they want the advice, listen to what they're saying, accept the boundaries around the situation. And that's not easy because we love them. So as you listen to those, I want to ask you this question. If this were a test, how'd you do? I mean, I want a retake. I want a do-over on so many, but it doesn't work that way. And that's why I think grandparents are the best grandparents, because they've learned from these types of things, and you learn what matters. So as we think about this, we need to remember that we're still learning as we're growing, even as we're growing and they're growing. But we grow because we learn. So not just this whole getting older that we're all doing, but we can continue to learn and grow and grow and learn. And that's what life's all about. It was never going to be a done deal. We're always working toward being that best version of us.
Absolutely.
So the question we leave you with is, did any of these parenting topics resonate with you? Any of the 5, sharing, questions, boundaries, mistakes, fixing problems? I mean, I kind of have an area in all of those that I want that redo. Can't do the redo, but I can continue to learn and grow and improve in that as I continue in this adult relationship with my children.
And anytime you look at the book of Proverbs, I think that's why the book of Proverbs is with us, is because they're about life lessons. You can spend a lot of time in the book of Proverbs. They're good life lessons and good reminders too, that when we're in these tough places, how we can grow and learn. And there's a lot of knowledge and wisdom in Proverbs.
There is.
I want to check it out.
Yeah, make Proverbs your next reading. Put it on your reading list. Have a great time, and we'll see you next time on TGIF. Bye.
Bye.